It started with a knock on my door in ordinary Tuesday afternoon in late April 2025 that spiraled into a nightmare I couldn't have scripted. My younger brother, Ethan, had dropped by my place on Willow Crest Drive for a quick VY sit. We were sipping coffee on my porch, laughing about his latest failed attempt at gardening, when two figures in crisp, pseudo-official uniforms marched up my walkway. They called themselves the HOA patrol team, but to me, they were nothing more than glorified bullies with badges they'd probably bought online. Their eyes glinted with something unsettling arrogance, maybe, or a hunger for control. Before I could process what was happening, they'd slapped handcuffs on Ethan, accusing him of unauthorized loitering on my property. My property. The absurdity of it hit me like a punch to the gut. I still remember the way Ethan's jaw tightened, his calm exterior masking the storm I knew was brewing inside him. He's always been the steady 1-2 years younger, but a lifetime wiser, with a quiet strength forged through years of NAVY, gating life's chaos. But those HOA goons didn't know who they were dealing with. They didn't know about the secret Ethan carried, one that would unravel their petty empire and drag us into a web of conspiracy stretching far beyond our manicured lawns. When the Secret Sare VYC rolled up an hour later, tires screeching and badges flashing, the smug grins on those patrolmen's faces melted into pure panic. That was the moment everything changed. I'd moved to Willow Crest Drive 6 months earlier, chasing the promise of a fresh start after a messy breakup. The neighborhood gleamed like a postcard, perfectly trimmed hedges, pastel-painted houses, and streets so clean you could eat off them. Ethan had pushed me to settle here, saying it was stable and close to family since he lived just a mile away with his wife, Clara, and their toddler, Mia. On the surface, it was idyllic, but beneath the polish lurked a darkness I hadn't anticipated. The Homeowners Association ran this place like a fiefdom, enforcing rules so draconian they'd make a dictator blush. Your mailbox had to be a specific shade of taupe. Your car couldn't sit in the driveway for more than 48 hours. Even the height of your grass was measured with a ruler literally. I'd seen one of the patrol guys, a wiry creep named Darren, kneeling in my neighbor's yard with a tape measure, scribbling notes like he was cracking a federal case. At first, I tried to play along. I'd just come off a year of heartbreak and self-doubt. All I wanted was peace. But peace was a fantasy here. The warning letters started piling up within weeks of my move-in. My porch light was too bright. My recycling bin lingered curbside 5 minutes past pickup. It was relentless, a slow drip of harassment dressed up as community standards. I'd vent to Ethan over late-night calls, and he'd listen patiently, his voice steady as he urged me to keep my cool. "They're just power tripping," he'd say. "We'll figure it out." I trusted him to always had a knack for soul VYing problems, ever since we were kids dodging our parents' fights. But neither of us could have predicted how far this would go. That Tuesday, Ethan had come over to brainstorm ways to push back against the HOA's nonsense. Our neighbor, Mrs. Delgado, a sweet widow in her 70s, had tearfully told us the day before how the patrol team had fined her due law $500 for planting tulips instead of the approved marigolds. Ethan was furious, Mrs. D had been like a grandmother to us growing up, and seeing her bullied lit a fire in him. "We need to dig into their finances," he'd said, pacing my VYing room. "If they're this aggressive, something's off. HOAs don't have patrol squads with handcuffs unless they're hiding something." I nodded, half VYing said, half terrified. Ethan had a history of sniffing out trouble, spent years as a freelance investigator after college, exposing shady landlords and crooked city officials. If anyone could crack this, it was him. We'd barely settled onto the porch when Darren and his partner, a hulking guy named Vince, strutted up. Darren's beady eyes locked onto Ethan. "You," he barked, pointing a stubby finger. "You're not on the resident list. State your business." Ethan raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "I'm VY citing my sister, Lauren. This is her house." Vince sneered, stepping closer. "Doesn't matter. Guests need pre-approval under Section 14B of the bylaws. No clearance, no entry." I laugh at Cal and help it. "Pre-approval? He's my brother, not a delivery guy. You can't be serious." Darren's face darkened. We don't joke about security, ma'am. He's trespassing. Ethan stood, hands in his pockets, voice calm but edged with steel. Trespassing on private property I'm in VY Ted onto? Show me the law that backs that up. Vince cracked his knuckles, a cheap intimidation move. We're the law here. HOA board gave us full authority. You're coming with us. Before I could blink, Darren yanked out a pair of cuffs, and Vince shoved Ethan against the railing. I lunged forward, shouting, "Get off him!" But Vince pushed me back hard. I hit the porch floor, pain shooting through my elbow, and watched in horror as they dragged Ethan down the steps. He didn't fight them, not physically, but his eyes burned with a quiet defiance that told me this wasn't over. "Call Clara," he said over his shoulder as they hauled him off. "Tell her to stay calm." My hand shook as I fumbled for my phone, dialing his wife. Clara picked up on the second ring, her voice bright until I blurted out what happened. "They arrested him? For what?" she demanded, panic creeping in. "Some made-up trespassing charge." "I'm going after him," I said, already grabbing my keys. She hesitated, then said, "Be careful, Lauren. Ethan's been poking around the HOA lately. He didn't tell you everything." That stopped me cold. "What do you mean?" But she hung up, Leah VYing me with a sinking feeling I couldn't shake. I sped to the HOA's command center, a bland brick building next to the community pool, where kids splashed oddly VY us to the chaos inside. Bursting through the doors, I found Ethan locked in a windowless storage room they'd converted into a makeshift cell. A metal chair, a flickering bulb, and a padlock on the door. It was a scene from a bad crime, MOVYE. Darren stood guard, arms crossed, smirking like he'd won something. "Let him go," I snapped. "You've got no right." He leaned in, breath sour with coffee. "He's a troublemaker. Been asking too many questions about our operations. Board says he stays till he signs a compliance agreement." I clench my fists. "Compliance? You mean groveling to your ego trip? Call the cops if you're so legit." He chuckled. "This is a private matter. Police don't meddle in HOA business." I stormed out, dialing 911 anyway. The dispatcher sounded bored. "If it's on private property and no one's hurt, it's CIVYL, not criminal. File a complaint." I wanted to scream. My brother was cuffed in a closet by wannabe cops, and no one cared. Back home, I paced, replaying Clara's cryptic warning. What had Ethan uncovered? I rifled through his jacket feed, left it on my couch, and found a folded paper. A photocopy of an HOA ledger with circled entries labeled consulting fees paid to a company called Crest VY EW Holdings. Thousands of dollars, monthly, to a firm I'd never heard of. My stomach twisted. This was bigger than petty fines. By midnight, I was a wreck, calling Ethan's old investigator contact for AdVYC. Most told me to lawyer up and wait. But waiting wasn't an option, not with Ethan locked up. At 3 a.m., a pounding on my door jolted me awake. I peeked through the blinds, expecting Darren's smug face. Instead, 3 men in dark suits stood there, badges gleaming under the porch light. Secret Sarah VYC, the tallest one said, voice clipped. "I'm Agent Reyes. We're looking for Ethan Carter. Open the door." My heart hammering, I let them in. Reyes was all business, sharp jaw, sharper eyes flanked by 2 agents who scanned my house like it might be rigged with traps. "He's my brother," I stammered. "The HOA's got him locked up at their center." "Why you want him?" Reyes frowned. "Locked up? By who?" I explained, the words tumbling out. "Patrol team. Handcuffs, trespassing nonsense." His expression hardened. "Take us there. Now." I didn't argue. We piled into their black SUV, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn gloom as we raced back to the command center. A crowd had already formed, neighbors in bathrobes, whispering as the agents stormed the building. Darren and Vince were there, flanked by a third guy I didn't recognize. Older, slick-back hair, suit pristine despite the hour. He watched us approach, unblinking. Reyes didn't waste time. "You're detaining Ethan Carter. Release him immediately, or we'll charge you with unlawful imprisonment." Darren sputtered. "We've got authority," but Reyes cut him off, flashing his badge. "Not over a federal asset. Move." Vince paled, fumbling with keys, and led us to the storage room. Ethan sat there, wrists raw from cuffs, but his face lit up when he saw Reyes. "Took you long enough," he said, half smiling. An agent freed him, and I rushed over, hugging him so tight I felt his heartbeat. The suit Guy Campbell, Reyes called him, shifted uncomfortably as the agents cornered him. "You've been dodging us, Campbell," Reyes growled. "Thought you'd hide out in suburbia?" Ethan rubbed his wrists, turning to me. "I owe you an explanation." Over coffee back at my place, he spilled it. Months ago, at a neighborhood barbecue, he'd recognized Campbell, a lowlife he'd investigated years back for forging IDs tied to a militia group. Campbell had vanished after that case, but here he was, posing as an HOA ad VY Ethan had tipped off Reyes, his old Secret Service VYC contact, and started digging into the HOA's books. "Those consulting fees," he said, tapping the ledger. "They're payments to Campbell's shell company. The HOA's laundering money, fines, dues, all funneled to him and God knows who else." I stared at him, reeling. "Why didn't you tell me?" He sighed. "Didn't want you caught in the crossfire. But when they grabbed me, I knew they'd overplayed their hand." Reyes chimed in. The HOA president, Victor Grayson, was likely Campbell's puppet, strong-arming residents to keep the cash flowing. Ethan's snooping had spooked them into action. Over the next week, the feds tore Willow Crest apart. Campbell was arrested, Grayson fled, and the patrol team faced charges. Neighbors cheered as the old regime crumbled, but I couldn't relax, not with Grayson still out there. Ethan and I became obsessed, poring over records Claire smuggled from Mrs. Delgado and others, proof of extortion, fake charities, links to extremist cells. One night, a tip came. Grayson was holed up in a dive bar an hour away. Ethan wanted to wait for Reyes, but I was done being a bystander. "He terrorized us," I said, voice shaking. "I'm going." Against his better judgment, Ethan agreed. We drove out at dusk, adrenaline buzzing, and staked out the bar. When Grayson emerged gaunt, unshaven, but unmistakably him, spotted us. He ran, and we chased, feet pounding through alleys until he hit a dead end. "You're finished," Ethan shouted, snapping a photo. Grayson lunged, but I tackled him, fury overriding fear. Sirens wailed. Reyes had tracked us again. Grayson was cuffed, spitting threats as they hauled him off. Back home, Willow Crest healed. A new HOA rose, bare bones and fair. Ethan and Clara moved closer, and I stayed, determined to rebuild what Grayson had broken. Justice wasn't just revenge, it was redemption, for us and everyone he'd hurt. And as I walked the streets, finally free, I knew we'd turned our nightmare into a triumph. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.